Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made this pencil skirt using African print fabric. So if you're interested in this video, please do keep on watching. So I'll be using the pencil skirt pattern that I drafted in my previous video. If you haven't watched it, I'll put the link to the video in the description box. So we are going to be making alterations on our patterns. So first we're going to be working on the front pattern. So I'm just going to put the back aside. Right there at my center front, I'm going to mark 1 inch downwards from the waistline right there. And then I'm going to connect the lines back into my original waistline. Next, I'll be closing up the dart at the front because I don't want to have a dart in front of my skirt, the front skirts rather. So I'm going to close up the dart like this, then use my paper tape to close up the dart entirely so it doesn't move. Then I'm going to use my ruler to reconnect the lines. After that, I'm going to cut out the marked area. So the reason why I came down by 1 inch is so as to eliminate smile lines in front of the skirt. Next, I'm going to be marking out my waistband of 2 inches right there on the pattern paper. So after doing that, I'm going to connect the lines together. So your waistband can be whatever size you want it to be. Next, I'm just going to label that area as the waistband for the front. So this is the back. I'm also going to go ahead and mark out the 2 inches waistband just like I did for the front. So I don't want the waistband to have a dart, so I'm going to close up my back dart like this. We are still going to open the dart after removing the waistband from the pattern. So I'm going to close the dart like this and use my paper tape to seal up the dart so it doesn't move. Next, I'm going to reconnect the lines again together because closing the dart kind of shifted the line that we already had there for the waistband. Next, I'm going to cut my waistband out of the pattern like this and label this area as the waistband for the back pattern. So guys, this is the fabric that I'll be working with. It is African print. So as you can see here, my fabric is already folded into two. I'm just going ahead to place the center front of my pattern right there on the folded part of the fabric. So this is the front skirt pattern. So after that, I'm just going to pin the pattern to the fabric like this. After pinning, I'll be adding 1/2 inch seam allowance to the waistline area of the skirt. While drafting, I didn't add the 1/2 inch seam allowance there, so that's why I'm doing it right now. So don't forget to do yours. After adding the 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'm just going ahead to cut off my skirts from the fabric. Once I'm done, I'm going to notch the center front. I'm also going to place a notch at the hip line of the front and also at the skirt length line right there. So for the back, my fabric is already folded into two. So I'm just going to pin my back pattern right there in position. Then I'm also going to be adding 1/2 inch seam allowance right there at the waistline of the back. Then I'm going to cut through just like I did for the front. After cutting, I'll also be placing a notch right there at my hip line, also at my skirt length line, and also at the hip line area at the zip allowance. So guys, as you can see, I have removed my paper tape from the rest of my dart. So I'm just going to place notches at the dart area at the waistline. Next, I'm just measuring what I have left for my dart on my pattern paper. I have 7 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and unpin my back pattern from the fabric. So I'm going to mark out 7.5 inches this time for the darts. Remember, I added ½ seam allowance to the waistline. Next, I'll be marking out my darts. After doing it on this part, I'm going to do it on the other part of the back, marking 7.5 inches too, and then I'm going to connect the dart legs together. To the rest of my fabric, I have ironed interfacing on it, and I'm going ahead to fold my fabric into two. Then I'm also going to fold it into two like this, making a total of 4. After that, I'll be placing my front waistband right there, okay, and pinning to the fabric. The waistband for the front is going to be cut on fold, and we are going to be cutting out 2 pieces at a time. Before cutting out, I'm going ahead to add ½ seam allowance to both the lower part and the upper part of my waistband. Don't forget to do this. So after adding the seam allowances, I'm just going ahead to cut out the waistband for the front. So I'm going to go ahead and fold my fabric into two like this, and also fold it into two again like this, making a total of 4. I'll be placing my back waistband on the fabric like this and cutting it out. Make sure to add ½ seam allowance to both the upper part and the lower part of the waistband. So guys, after cutting, this is what I have at the end of the day. So I'm just going to take all my fabric pieces and move to the sewing machine. So to begin the sewing process, I'm going to be sewing the dart at the back for the 2 sides of the back. So guys, I won't be using a lining for this skirt, okay? So after sewing the dart, I'm just going to go ahead and make knots with my threads right there at the end of the dart and cut off the thread. I'm also going ahead to do the same thing for the second dart. I'm not back stitching at the end of the dart, rather I'm just going to form knots with the 2 threads. This is so that the darts can relax without puckering at the end. So next, I'll be working on the waistbands. I'll begin with the front waistband. I'm going to make notches right there at the center front of the 2 waistbands, and then I'll place them together like this, making sure that the notch at the center front match up for the 2 of them. Then I'm just going ahead to pin the rest of the darts together. So I'll be sewing the upper part of the waistband from one side of the waist to the other side like this. I'm just placing it under my machine and stitching it by a ½ seam allowance. When I'm done, I'm going to trim off the excess fabric that I have right there. I'm just going to go ahead and give the waistband a good press so that it relaxes. As you can see, I'm done ironing the waistband. You can see how relaxed it is right here. So this is the waistband for the back. As you can see, there are 4 pieces, 2 on each side of the back skirts. Next, I'll be stitching the top part of the waistband for the back. Before then, I'm going to notch the center back of the waistband so that I don't get confused along the line, because the side seam looks similar to the center back. So I'm also stitching the upper part by a ½ seam allowance for the 2 waistbands. When I'm done, I'm going to also go ahead and trim off excess fabric. You can choose to notch yours if you want, but I like to trim off excess fabric. So as you can see, I have ironed my waistbands and you can see how flat they look. I'll be attaching the waistband for the front to the front part of the skirt, placing the center notches together like this, and I'm going to pin them together. Then I'm also going to pin the side seams together. After pinning, I'm going ahead to sew the pieces together using the 1/2 inch seam allowance that I added while cutting. So this is what I have after joining them together. So now I'll be attaching the back waistbands together. Okay, so I'm going to place the center back of the waistband to the center back of the skirt piece like this, and I'm going to pin it. I'm also going to pin the side seams together like so. I'll do this for the two of the bands, and then I'll sew by 1/2 inch seam allowance because that was what I added while cutting. So I'm done with the first waistband. I'm going to repeat the same thing on the second one. So this is what I have after attaching the two waistbands to the two part of the back. So this is the zipper that I'll be working with. So remember, I placed a notch at my hip line while cutting at the zipper allowance. So next I'm going ahead to mark 2.5 inches downwards. This is where I want my zip to end, so I'm just going to pin that point. And also at the hemline, I'm going to mark out my hemming allowance of 1.5 inches like that, and I'm also going to measure 3 inches from that point upwards. This is going to be for my back slits. So after that, I'm going to pin the 2 points that I just made together. I'm going to be stitching from that point down to this point, but before then I'm going to mark out the 1 inch zipper allowance that I added at the center back, and I'll be stitching by that 1 inch mark. And when I get to that point, I'm going to back stitch. After stitching, I'm going to mark out my 1 inch zipper allowance from the waistband all the way to where I want my zip to end. I'm also going to repeat the same thing at the other side of the back. So guys, I'm going to open up the area that I stitched up like this. Okay, so I'm going to be attaching the end of my zipper to 1.5 inch below where I want the zipper to end. So I'm going ahead to attach it like this. Remember, 1.5 inch below where I want my zipper to end, and then I'll pin together all the way to the waistband right there at the center back. Next, I'm just going to stitch close to my zip teeth like this. So when I get to where the zip ends, I'm going to back stitch. So now I'm going to attach the zipper to the other part of the back like I did for the other side. When you get to the waistband, make sure that the seam lines of the two waistbands are lined together. So I'm just going ahead to stitch the zipper on the second side of the back, and when I get to the edge of the waistband, I'm going to back stitch. To finish the zipper at the waistband, I'm going to bend the zipper over the waistband like this, and then I'm going to pin. Then I'm going to trim off the excess zipper that I don't need anymore. After that, I'm going to pin right to where it ends so that while sewing I can easily identify it. This is what I have after stitching. So I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side of the zipper. So this is what I have after sewing the zipper. Good sides to good sides, I'm going to place both the front and back skirt pieces together, and I'm going to pin the waist area yeah, the side seam at the waist area, I'm going to pin them together like this. And remember that I placed a notch right there at the hip line Y cotton, so I'm going to join the two hip line notches together. I'm also going to repeat the same thing at my skirt length line, pinning the notches right there together. I'm going ahead to repeat the same thing at the other side of the side seam, pinning the hip line notches together, and also doing the same at the skirt length line area. So I'm just going ahead to sew my side seams using the 1 inch seam allowance that I added while drafting. So guys, we are literally almost done with the skirts. So to hem the dress, I'm first going to fold my 1 inch zipper allowance that I have right there at the hem. After doing this, I'm going to fold my hemming allowance first. I'm going to fold it once first, okay, and then I'm going to fold it again for the second time. When I'm done, I'm going to pin that area. At the side seam, okay, this is the front of the skirt, so I'm going to push the side seam like this to the back, fold the hem once and fold again twice. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin it, and after pinning, I'm going to sew my hem. So I'm sewing the hem by 1.5 inch that I added while drafting. So I've gone ahead to give the skirt a good press. This is the front and this is the back. Here is the final look of the skirt, guys. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. And with that, I will see you all in my next video.